Really don't know where it's gonna end. I think one of us is gonna have to die now.
You say this woman's stalking you?
Yeah, like 6 months maybe.
Why'd it take you so long to report it?
I think she needs help. She comes to my work, my house. She sends me emails like all the time.
Are any threatening towards you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's particularly threatening.
There's a reason you're keeping her around, and maybe it's what she gives you.
Got really manly hands, haven't you? Chiseled jawline. Should we run away together?
You indulge her.
Oh, please.
I think you love it.
There are so many examples of the idea of who is a perfect victim. You can look at court cases, you can look at certain celebrities, you can look at just this idea, this stereotypical idea of what does it mean to truly be an acceptable victim. They go back to the show Baby Reindeer, and I read some comments. I noticed that there were some people that were calling this guy a narcissist, that he was actually taking advantage of her, he was leading her on, like all the things that it sounded a lot like victim blaming. And I was sort of thinking, what if it was the other way around? And what if she was a woman and it was a man that was stalking her? And I know that does unfortunately happen to some women, but the life is complex. People are complex, and things are not black and white. We could be a very flawed person. This guy, first of all, he was in his 20s. He was a struggling comedian. Well, at least in the show. I'm just really referring more to the show, because as much as I know a lot of this is based on his own life, this was not a documentary. So I'm just going to talk about him in the show, the character, based on the real person. He had already been assaulted several years earlier. It was what we call a betrayal trauma by somebody who was a mentor, who held out sort of this promising future. It's what narcissists do, called future faking, where they make you believe that you just have this fantastic future ahead of you. It's very enticing. It's very intoxicating. And this guy's struggling. This guy found a vulnerable spot. He found an inn. He found a vulnerable place. We can't know until we're in that person's position. It's not our place to judge. All we can do is be compassionate. And we all make choices, maybe that we wished we'd made different choices, but we can't to vilify someone for the choices they made. It's just another form of victim blaming, and it's just kind of re-traumatizing. So this is a flawed person, just like we're all flawed. What I found really interesting about the show was that it wasn't a black and white way of looking at things. So even the woman who was stalking him, whose name was Martha on the show, you kind of felt sorry for her too. So she was obviously very mentally ill. She had a history of trauma, lack of self-esteem, all kinds of things. I'm not going to diagnose, but I was picking up some possible borderline traits, possibly maybe some bipolar traits, some, various personality disorders, complex PTSD, hints of narcissism, absolutely. And she wasn't a particularly great person. I mean, she was homophobic and transphobic and racist and said all kinds of horrible things. So we're not saying she was some angel. I mean, she was not a particularly likable person. And at the same time, she comes off kind of pathetic and kind of this sad person. And you can just see the struggle that's going on. So it just shows that things are not black and white. And she certainly had no right to stalk this guy. She had no right to do anything. So we're not excusing her behavior. It's just a way to look at it as it's complicated, right? Like, obviously, what she was doing was not okay, what this guy was experiencing. And yet, there was this part of him that still befriended her on Facebook. He did all these things, and that doesn't make sense to people, because they're like, well, why would you encourage this person? He's coming from a place of trauma as well. So you have two very traumatized people interacting in incredibly toxic, unhealthy ways, and then they're both reinforcing that really toxic, unhealthy behavior. And he was originally coming from a place of empathy. He said he felt sorry for her. He felt bad for her. She was crying in his bar. He gave her a free cup of tea and probably thought, what's the harm? Right? So he was trying to connect with her on an empathetic level. There's no way for us to know that that person is going to become a stalker. And also coming from his own trauma that he hadn't resolved and he hadn't told anybody. And so he's walking around with his trauma, she's walking around with her trauma, and they're acting it out in incredibly unhealthy ways. And at the end of the day, yes, the victim, it is definitely him, because he did not ask to be stalked, he did not ask to be harassed. She started harassing his family. So he is the victim, he is the person who's being wronged. And, the police don't take him seriously. People think it's funny. All those, really just being gaslit in a way by everyone else. So then that makes him doubt himself, his own reality. He even took a long time to go to the police because he didn't know if it was that serious. And even when he sees her like around and she looks really sad, and then he's kind of worried about her. So if this guy was truly a narcissist, he wouldn't have that kind of empathy. So I don't think the narcissist label is really fair. I think this is someone who had some kind of void deep inside them, some hurt, some pain, and it feels good. It feels good to have someone pay attention to you. It feels good to get that, to have someone kind of fawning over you a little bit. And is it healthy? No. But, I get the sense it was kind of like a drug to him. Like even his girlfriend at the time, she said, I think you're addicted to the drama. I think you kind of like this. And so when people look at this outwardly, it makes no sense to them. It's so easy to blame. It's so easy to say, but what the hell? Just leave, tell her to get lost, block her number, go away. And he really didn't. He also had nothing going on. I mean, he wasn't doing well in his career. He was in this dead-end job. He struck me as kind of a lonely guy. He didn't, just not feeling great. He has unresolved trauma. He's not in a good place. When we're not in a good place, we don't make the best decisions. And something I've discussed with clients a lot is what happens to our brain when we're in trauma. That the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain, the thinking, the part that makes the decisions, critical thinking, kind of shuts down and goes offline. And so we can be very impulsive. We can just do crazy things. We can even become self-destructive. We can do things against our own interests. But that doesn't make us bad people. And that's going to bring me back to the idea of who is the perfect victim. There is no perfect victim. And I think we really need to get outside of this idea that you have to suffer a certain way or be a certain way to be acknowledged as a proper victim. And if you didn't, you deserved it, or you had it coming or whatever. So we just need to have more understanding, more compassion, and less judgment, and understand, trying to look through that trauma lens. And life is not black and white, first of all. And when we have unresolved trauma, we can do really crazy things, and it can happen to anybody, but nobody deserves to be stalked, harassed. Nobody deserves to be treated badly. And that's it for today. And thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.